Welcome, welcome, welcome. Got a lot to discuss today, so we're just going to get straight into it. There's a lot going on. Dollars dropping, stock market's going up. There's this incessant need to want to attack and ban crypto, which we'll get into in a little while. The markets are all over the place. Markets that shouldn't be going up are going up. Markets that should be going down aren't. And obviously with this kind of attack on the US dollar as well, in the sense of you've got, East Asian countries that are now refusing to do trade in US dollars, and they're opting to do that instead, with each other. I think ultimately we're probably going to see something like the yuan or the Chinese yuan basically taking over at this point. See that was going to be, Russia's currency becoming more and more prevalent, within our sort of economic or global economics, basically. And that's an interesting article. I want to take a look at that one as well. We'll look at that at the end. So before we get into all of that, just make sure that you like the stream. The stream is being broadcast across 2 channels. Yeah, I'm good, Sergio. Awesome. Thank you. Morning, Shane. How are you? Billy, morning. If underlying fundamentals are still crap, why do you think stock markets are going up? Yeah, just bull trap. I think it's pure manipulation, to be honest. Doesn't make sense to me. There's a lot going on, and obviously I'm going to try and dissect some of that today. I've seen something else that said the same thing, that Chinese currency will be taking over. Yeah, I do believe that we're getting more and more closer to what could potentially be, a Chinese currency, reserve currency, or the world reserve currencies. But we'll see what happens. I mean, obviously there's a lot going on, Asian, basically ASEAN considers dropping US dollar, euro, yen, pound for settlements. I think this is already done at this point. And they're saying in a recent meeting in Indonesia, ASEAN finance ministers and central bank governors discussed how to slash down the dependence on major currencies, according to a briefing report that said, according to a briefing report, the said Union of Nations considers dropping the US dollar, euro, yen, and British pound from financial transactions. Instead, they collectively intend to foster settlements via local currencies. So what we're seeing is this kind of rush for smaller economies, smaller countries, and even some of the larger economies and countries, predominantly sort of the East Asian countries and Asian countries, looking to their own economies and looking to their own currency to do business. And then what's going to happen, I believe, is it's effectively going to split economies. So instead of having the United States dollar as the world reserve currency in which everybody is doing business in, it's probably going to end up being a select group of countries in the East that are going to be using their own currencies to do business with each other and kind of pushing the dollar, to one side. And when you really think about the implications of that, it's not just, well, why does it matter? It's not a big deal or whatever else. It's a huge deal because the devaluing of the dollar, causes a ripple effect that goes across the entire globe, because it is the world reserve currency. It's the one that is used the most. A lot of people don't know this, but there's actually a list of reserve currencies. It's not just the dollar, but ultimately the dollar, reigns supreme at this time. And what's going to happen ultimately is you'll end up in a situation where, the dollar will devalue, and the buying power of that dollar will also become less and less and less. It's almost like there's no respect for the US at the moment, and people are really trying their luck. And I think what's happened, if I may be so bold to talk a little bit about politics, I think what we're seeing this kind of look at the US, the way Biden is, their administration, which is a farce, to be honest. And again, I've got I basically have no ties to US politics whatsoever. I really don't care. But you just look at what's happening. The man can't even walk in the right direction. People look at the US and, the Biden administration, they're just like, yeah, these people are a joke now. So we can pretty much do whatever we want. And the problem is when the dollar goes down and it's used less and less and less, the US has less power, to put trade sanctions in place, to stop people from using certain economic things. There's less trade that's being done. When you look at when you look at China, I'll give you a really good example. When you look at China, obviously a lot of the importing that is done in the US is from China, right? So if you think about a company like Apple doing business with China, obviously paying in, dollars, then ultimately what happens is you end up in a situation where if that dollar isn't being used and China says no, we want to accept, we basically won't accept US dollars. We're only going to accept our local currency. Then that means the US has to basically pay in Chinese yuan, right? And in doing so, it strengthens the Chinese economy, it strengthens the Chinese currency, and it devalues even more the US dollar, right? And ultimately, what are Apple going to say? Sorry, we're not going to do business with you in your own, in your own currency. Where are they going to go? They don't have the means to be able to do some of the things that they do in the US. So maybe they'll start to look elsewhere. But if all of the East Asian countries refusing to do business in US dollar, what are we going to be left with? It's going to be a bit of a nightmare, right? But when you look at it, the US dollar reserve has increased among other countries. Yep. It would be kind of cool to have BTC as a universal currency and you can buy into it with whatever your local currency is, although I'm sure it's way more complicated than that. Yeah. It would be interesting if that's the case, but who knows? Rob, hello and happy opening day. How you doing, Rob? You're right, mate. Happy opening day. I don't know what that is, man. I'm not sure what happy opening day is. Yeah. So let's move on a little bit. So obviously, this is what I want to talk about predominantly. U.S. Senator Elizabeth Warren launches anti-crypto re-election campaign. What an interesting thing to do. U.S. Senator Elizabeth Warren has once again proven her anti-crypto stance through one of her recent tweets. Warren has been quite vocal in sharing her dislikes for the cryptocurrency industry. During the collapse of FTX, she expressed her view that this should be a wake-up call to the Justice Department, the SEC, and also the US Treasury to crack down on cryptocurrency. She was also of the opinion that cryptocurrency should be either regulated or taken down. Well, first of all, no disrespect, but she's a dinosaur, right? Things are moving, very, very quickly, especially within cryptocurrency. And I think what's happening is, some of these older generation folk refuse to let go, of their power over the current financial system. And cryptocurrency liberates people from said current financial system. And this is not something that they want. This is something that's really irritating them. And this is why they're really, really trying to bring it down. They're really trying to attack aggressively, to regulate, to stop it, to, make a point of saying, no, this is not safe. This is not where you want to be putting your money, trust our banks, trust banks. But here's the problem. You're saying all of this and you're pushing this agenda when the banking sector is collapsing and showing potential systemic risk that could broaden and go, sort of global. So you end up in a situation where banks are failing. Nobody trusts the US. Nobody trusts the US banking system. You've got global banking systems failing, Credit Suisse, Deutsche Bank, so on. Again, more banks failing, right, across the globe. So why would anybody on earth trust the banking industry, right? And I think I mentioned this in the podcast that I did recently about, this on the 23rd of April, there's going to be a message that comes out onto all UK phones. It's going to be like a national alert message. And and I believe it's the 23rd of April. When that happens, you have to accept it before it lets you use your phone again, which I find it very interesting because at the end of the day, wouldn't you? Here's my thinking. If they're doing something like that while all of this stuff is happening within the banking industry, what happens when there's a bank that collapses? They put out a national message on your phone, which you have to accept, or they prevent you from accepting. And then you can't go onto your phone and potentially log onto your banking app and then remove your money from that bank. Because right now, it's not like it used to be before, back in 2000 and whenever it was, 2008, 2009. Now it's, if you want to take your money out of the bank, you can do it seamlessly and very quickly, and to be able to stop that, send a message and don't let you use it, right? And then you do that under the guise of, oh, well, we're doing it for safety. We're doing it if we ever need to tell you, about anything that's happening in the UK, Complete nonsense. All of this is about control. It's about stopping cryptocurrency at its source, and refusing to let people do what they want with their money. This is an interesting one. Before I continue, let me just get back to the comments. Baseball, okay, open day baseball, nice. Dinosaur, hard facts. The older generation isn't comfortable with what they didn't understand. They don't understand anything, and they do understand. There's only one thing that this older generation, these dinosaurs, understand, and that is they're losing control, they're losing power, and they're trying to get that back by using the SEC, the FCA, some of these global corporations, these meetings that they have, when they all get together and they sit in a room and basically, absolutely decimate, isn't it so funny about this whole carbon crap? Carbon this, carbon that, carbon, and they all go flying around and driving around, and with like 20 or 30 different cars of security and everything else. Just stop talking nonsense. But anyway, I digress. The point is, I want to focus predominantly on cryptocurrency and this kind of attack. It's we versus them. It's not a war, but it is certainly. We're getting to that point now where cryptocurrency is a problem for them, and we love it. We love cryptocurrency. We want to engage with cryptocurrency. We want to be able to do what we want with our cryptocurrency. We have all the means, we have all the power, the technology, the smarts, these very, very smart people, very, very fast paced, technology that is increasing at an incredibly fast pace. So we end up in a situation where, we're really, really pushing ahead with all of this. And then we have this kind of backlash, which I don't think is going to work. I really don't think it's going to work. You're going to have this, and here's what's interesting in the US, there's this kind of divide. You have the for and against, we versus them. There's a lot of people in the US, senators, local officials and so on, that are pro cryptocurrency, and they're really pushing to try to position themselves in a place where they can actually make a difference and stop some of these regulations coming in particular states and so on. So you'll end up in a situation where you have maybe half the country that is pro crypto and half the country that isn't. I think ultimately, as this cycles through, and I don't mean to sound a bit, sort of dreary, but, as this older generation slowly starts to pass, and then this, the current generation starts to come up a little bit more, maybe in the next sort of 5 to 10 years, it's going to be a completely different picture. But again, we'll see what that control looks like. Just a quick reminder, don't forget to like the stream. I want to do a test in a little while as well. Somebody sent me a message about a particular channel, which I really like, to be fair. I'm not going to mention the channel, but he mentioned on his channel about something, and I want to try it on this stream, which can be very, very interesting, but I'll let you know about that in a second. Dinosaurs on point. Absolutely. We should be studying statutes, I guess. Yeah. Because if we are waiting for the news to drop and learn what's next, we're already too late. Absolutely. Why on earth would they want to stifle innovation for control it? Absolute madness. It is absolute madness. But they do this. You say, why would they want to? Because it's not about innovation. It's not about, being able to watch things flourish and grow. It's like, okay, does that make sense? Yeah. Is that going to affect our control over the masses? Yes. Okay. We need to stop it. Yeah. Innovation or not, we need to stop it. And if we can't stop it, we need to be able to control it, period. Just join. What's the take on the Burry tweet? Yeah, I'm going to look into this now. At this point, it's hard to tell if there's a double meaning due to the cryptic nature of his tweets. The guy's crazy. I absolutely love Michael Burry. A lot of people give him a lot of grief, but I think the guy's amazing. It's digital commerce. So where do we read about this? Its regulations. They hide it. They hide it very, very well. Unless you really go deep, look at the SEC website, you look at the CFTC website, and really pay attention and continually check over and over and over again, on a weekly basis, sometimes 2 or 3 times a week. You've got to really stay on top of all of this stuff, to be honest. So let's go over to this Michael Burry tweet. Yeah, and I really like Michael Burry because he winds people up. Anybody that annoys anybody else, right? I say it differently. Anybody that irritates the masses, for me, I really like them because it means that they're saying things that people don't want to hear, and whether he's right or wrong, it doesn't matter because he gets people riled up, and there's, that causes a really nice sort of discussion. So the Big Short investor, Michael Burry, says he was wrong to say sell. So taking to Twitter, one of the most well-known names in finance has spoken about where he may have been wrong. Specifically, Michael Burry stated that he was wrong to say sell, referencing a tweet earlier this year with a single statement, sell. Burry is well known for being the inspiration behind the 2015 comedy drama. I can't see why it's a comedy, but anyway, The Big Short, which covers his place in the financial crisis of 2008. Subsequently, Burry rescinded his previous statement with another tweet. So if we just go down a little bit more, I was wrong to say sell. And here's the thing, this guy's very, very smart, right? And I'm not going to try and dissect or figure out whether or not he is correct or right or wrong. I don't know. But he's very, very smart. And ultimately, regardless of whatever you say, you have to kind of look at you've got to look at the results of his life, right? He's obviously done very well for himself. He was obviously, very, very on point, back then. And I believe he's on point now. And there was this kind of running theme with Michael Burry where people say, okay, it's almost, I tell you what it is, it's almost like people are waiting for him to be wrong. And this applies this applies to, sort of internet and social media, 100%. It doesn't matter who it is. People wait for you to be wrong so they can attack you and say, I told you so. It's so ego driven, right? But at the end of the day, the guy's loaded. He's got so much money. It's insane. Do you think he really cares? Ultimately, he will post because he will have an ego as well. And he'll post online because he wants to throw out a few opinions and whatever else. And when he's right, he can throw something else out there. Capo on crypto, same. Some of the big boys out there that have, huge followings on Twitter, they will post certain things, and they will stand by their, their commitment, or they stand by their tweets. And then ultimately over time, if they're right, I do it. Come on, I do it as well. I mean, I've been pretty on point for the last however many years and years and years. And I'll wait for that opportune moment. I'll post something. I mean, I posted something back in July last year, or I believe it was June or July last year, 2022, saying March is going to be an interesting month. And then obviously March comes, 2023, bang, we get all of this craziness that happens, right? How did I know that? Well, I do a lot of research. I go into the details. I break a lot of things down, things that you guys don't see, obviously, because I'd be online forever. I wouldn't literally be in a 24-hour stream and I would never stop. And I look into all of this stuff. And then obviously I kind of forward thought, I was looking at all the rate announcements. I was looking at all the timings of some of the news releases. And I'm like, yeah, it's going to be March. March is going to be a very interesting month. And then I threw it out there. Haha. I didn't say haha, but I did what Michael Burry does, what Capo does, what some of these other, other players do. So ultimately, I really like the guy. I like him because he winds people up. Now, whether he's right or wrong, I don't know. It is possible. It is possible that the tweet, I mean, now Burry says confronted prognosis that states that he was wrong to say so. Nevertheless, it feels like a lot has changed since January, so on and so on and so on. He may just be throwing something out because he I don't know, maybe some people sold and he feels bad because he's seen a little bit of a run. But for me personally, I don't know. It's an up and down thing. Either way, I really like him. I think he's on point. I think he was on point originally. What's happening now in terms of, like, it was wrong to say so. I think that may be for other reasons. I don't believe that he feels he's wrong. And I'll give you a very, very quick example why. When he shorted the market back then in 2008, he held for a very, very long time, right, while they were losing money, right? And during this time, in the last sort of 2 to 3 years, he's been kind of the same running theme. The next one's going to be really big. There's going to be a huge bubble. It's going to crash, this, that, the other. Nobody says that over years and years and years of time, unless their conviction is there, unless there's a very, very strong conviction and confidence that they're right. So it's very unlikely that he's just going to come out now and just throw out a little statement and say, I was wrong to say so. And all of a sudden now he's bullish. The next bull run's coming, so on and so on and so on. It is also possible that he's trying to manipulate the market as well. So that is definitely something to take into consideration. He's very popular. People know who he is. He gets attacked a lot, and there's obviously a lot of people that follow him and like him. So there's also the manipulation aspect as well. Definitely something to consider. At the end of the article says Burry sent a second tweet on Thursday, sardonically calling out contemporary traders for continuing to buy the dip in the US stocks, following a Bloomberg news report that 2023 is shaping up to be a banner year for the strategy, which gained prominence during the bull run that followed the 2008 financial crisis. Yeah. Is he the guy that shut down his Twitter for a while when he was wrong? Yeah, that happened recently. So guys, I want you to do me a favor, right? Before we get into into this, I'm not going to stop the stream, but I want you to do me a favor, right? If you're on a mobile phone, close the stream. Like, don't do this yet. Like, don't do this yet. But I want you to do me a favor. I want to try something, right? Because not a lot of people on here, but I want to see what the YouTube algorithm does with this, right? So I'm going to count down 3, 2, 1, and then I want you to do this, right? But I'll explain what I want you to do. I want you to refresh the stream. Obviously, the stream, I'm not going to turn it off. I'm going to stay here. I'm not going to go anywhere. So the stream's just going to continue. But I want you to refresh the stream if you're on a browser. And if you're on a phone, close the stream out and then open it up again, right? And I want to see what happens to them, to the view count. And then I'm going to check the stats in a day or so once they start to upload and the analytics on YouTube. And I want to see what the stats look like. So 3, 2, 1, go. Awesome, awesome. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I want to see. I want to check some stuff. Sweet, 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 sweet. I'm going to give it another 10 seconds, 10, 15 seconds for people to get back on, and then we will talk a little bit about the president in China who says he's preparing for war. Oh, yeah, the man's been preparing for war forever, right? It went from 2 people watching to 10, and a ton of comments showed up that weren't there before. From my end. Cool. Well, I'm streaming this in 2 places. I'm streaming it on 2 YouTube channels, and I'm also going to be doing a few things because something interesting happened the other day. I've been doing some stuff on the back end, and one of my videos just basically shot up to almost 500 views, which was a live stream. I've never had that before. Very, very interesting. Cool, 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 cool. So let's go over to this article, right? Obviously, China is a big player, when it comes to this potential war that's coming, right? And they do say a lot. I mean, how many times have they banned crypto? What are we talking? 30, 40, 50 times? No, we're going to ban cryptocurrency. We're going to ban Bitcoin. I mean, they must have banned Bitcoin so many times. And then it got to the point where it had absolutely no effect on the market whatsoever, right? For those that were around last year, this was like a common occurrence with China banning Bitcoin, and price. It was almost like an Elon Musk tweet. He tweeted, China said something, boom, Bitcoin, just dropped out of bed. So very, very interesting. But in terms of this war, it says here, a harrowing proclamation was clearly made at the annual meeting of China's parliament in front of top political advisor board. Specifically, President Xi Jinping told his constituents that he is preparing China for war, specifically stating the necessity for war preparations at several points. With 4 different speeches, Xi expressed the potential for war, even urging his generals to dare to fight according to foreign affairs. Conversely, these statements have arrived amidst various efforts made to increase the nation's defense. So obviously, now my take on this is this. He's been saying a lot of stuff, right? And there is this kind of running theme that we are globally going to be at war with, with China and Russia, right? There seems to be this almost China and Russia, pally. Some other countries are also starting to come on board. They're changing their currencies. They're refusing to do business in US dollars and so on. They obviously control a lot of natural resources, rare earth metals. They obviously control a lot, when it comes to the demand of or in this case exports, people doing business with China. So there is so much going on in terms of how this can potentially escalate into a pretty aggressive war, that you have to look at this not only at face value anymore with a pinch of salt. You've got to go a little bit deeper. You've got to go a little bit deeper, and you've got to start to try to understand what could potentially be happening, because normally I would be like, I'm sick and tired of listening to this clown. He's always saying that, they're preparing for war. But now it's a little bit different because they're backing it up by actually putting things in place or doing things that you wouldn't normally see. For example, with their currencies, refusing to do, business in dollars, changing a few things on their end. I've already said this before, and I actually read this recently, that China has subsonic missiles, right, that can render the US Navy defenseless. This is what they've said. And this is actually a thing. They actually do have subsonic missiles, or whatever it's called, some sort of technology that can render the US Navy defenseless. Now, I don't know how true that is, but the source really knows what he's talking about. And if that is the case, and there is a war that breaks out, it is going to be a very, very interesting scenario. And then obviously we'll see that filter out into global markets, and that is going to cause a massive, massive crash, in the market if we get there. We can see the ramp up of it. You guys know that I've been speaking about copper. Copper is very interesting because, copper is used to make shells. Some other commodities have already started moving or upticking just a little bit. When you look at the copper chart here on the monthly, it is poised for a pop. It is poised for a really, really strong move. It's already dipped, picked up buy side. If you just want to look at it from a psychological point of view, we've had a really, really nice pullback, and obviously we're getting this secondary coil to really, really pop. If it goes, it's going to go above 5. And when we start to see copper increase, we should start to see more demand coming into commodities. Gold's already starting to pop a little bit. Silver's popping a little bit. Some of the precious metals. I haven't looked at some of the other commodities like wheat, soybeans and so on. But my guess would be the metals will start first, and then, that's going to filter over into some of these other commodities in terms of foods. The more demand for commodities, obviously the higher the prices, but the more it will show, that there's going to be a rush, to protect commodities and protect assets when it comes to, what they're holding. Dollars getting, not the dollar, sorry, but the oil's getting a little bit of a pounding. Obviously, I've spoken about this chart many times, but obviously, it dipped all the way down here. This secondary pop here. Now, if this is reversed, we're going to see a pretty nasty drop on dollar. We're going to see a pretty nasty drop on crude, which wouldn't be good. It wouldn't be a good thing, but it would also show that if this happens and we do get a drop on crude oil, that the demand is increasing for commodities. And if there is an increase for commodities and a demand for commodities, it means various countries around the world are buying up commodities, buying up the physical commodity to protect their economy and to protect what they have, in stores. So definitely something to keep an eye on. And obviously, the closer we get to what I believe to be a pretty aggressive war, which I also believe we've been in since 2017. I'm not going to go into the details, but I think this has been going on for quite some time. It's not just about physical war, bullets and everything else, tanks. We're talking about cyber attacks. We're talking about, infrastructure changes. We're talking about, a lack of defense spending, in certain countries, the US being one of them, the UK absolutely being one of them. There is no US, there's no increase in US defense spending, and UK defense spending to the point where it's justified. Yeah, it's just not there. When you look at that, it's like, okay, well, the UK seems to just not care. And you look at Sunak, it's like, are you not paying attention to what's actually happening? So there's a lot of things to consider, man. A lot of things to consider. And then obviously the DXY, this is coming down to 100, man. I'm 100% convinced it's coming down to 100. However long it takes, it's going to get there. The dollar's getting pounded, and this is going to continue. The more that we see, things like this, people not doing business in US dollars, and then obviously that's going to spill out into a lot of different markets. There was something that I read recently. Oh, look at this clown. Ash WSB. If you're on the stream, stop tweeting, man. Seriously. It's very unlikely he's going to be on the stream, but this is ridiculous. It only takes one altcoin to change your life and make you financially free. Which one is your favorite? This stuff really drives me nuts, man. It doesn't even make any sense. Obviously we know why they do this. We want to pump tokens or whatever, and kind of drop your Bitcoin address below and make sure you are following me. Don't ask why. No, thanks. For those that are interested, just to let you know, today is the last day, for the Swissborg Series A. I'm invested in this. I've got money in this, quite a lot of money in this. I've known Swissborg for a long time. I've been invested with them for quite a while. We've got a Genesis account, got Generation account. Probably, I wouldn't say I was one of the original investors, but I've been with Swissborg for quite some time. So, I trust them. I think they're amazing. What they're doing is absolutely brilliant, and definitely worth looking into. I'm not telling you what to do, but it's, for me, if you live in Europe, Swissborg is definitely a really good exchange, to have. 1 year Explorer. Yeah, this is the if you purchase some, you can get silver and gold tickets basically. So if you purchase some of the Series A shares, they'll give you a ticket, and you can kind of do a little wheel. It's pretty cool. U.S. citizens residing in the U.S. states depart immediately. What? U.S. citizens residing in the United States should depart immediately. I know we're bouncing around a little bit, but I'm just curious. Chile, Tasmania, New Zealand, if you worry about nuclear war. Okay. Yeah. There is nowhere you can go to have it all as bad as trajectory of the US, and still in place for many reasons. And there is this kind of looming, pending. Is there going to be a nuclear war? I'll tell you something else. I actually watched something. I don't know what you guys feel about Donald Trump. I really like the guy, to be honest. But I was listening to something recently, and it's quite interesting. He said in an interview, that Putin mentions nuclear, keeps saying the word nuclear over and over again, and if he becomes president again, he goes, that will stop. Like, you cannot let this person, not just Putin, anybody, continue to keep saying the word nuclear over and over again. Like, we're talking about the means to destroy effectively the planet. Now, I'm not a nuclear physicist. I don't know what's going on, in terms of nuclear, I don't want to say the word, but nuclear, rockets and these types of things. But what I do know is that they're no good, and they can stop anybody from living in that area for a very, 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 very long time, years and years and years. And obviously, I remember reading an article years ago, back in 2002, 2003, and it was saying that if you strategically place nuclear bombs around the world, in strategic places, right, you can actually destroy the entire planet, kill everybody, and make it inhabitable. Like, this is serious stuff, man. And you're talking about nuclear this, nuclear that's no good. This is no good. So I think we're definitely headed towards some pretty interesting times, and it is quite scary as well. It is quite scary. We're all trying to find our way in all of this. We're all trying to position ourselves within cryptocurrency where it makes sense. We're trying to bring things to market that we feel make sense, but we also have got to, while we're doing that, we also have to keep an eye on everything else that's happening, within the global landscape, to make sure that we're abreast of some of these things, because I've said it and I'll say it again. I think this is going to come out of nowhere. I really do. I really think it's going to come out of nowhere. We may see we'll just make, I wake up 2, 3, 4, 5 times a night. Like, I don't sleep. I don't set alarms, but I just naturally wake up at 2 o'clock, 2:30, 3:15, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. I don't really sleep, and I'll quickly check my phone. So like, I will see. I'm expecting when I wake up one of these evenings, right, or early in the morning, to just see red in the market, like really bad. It doesn't mean it's going to happen at any point today, tomorrow, the next week, I don't know, but I just got that feeling because there's just too much going on. There's just too much going on. The only way to get around that is if they really control the effect of what's happening while they're slowly introducing, or in this case, expeditedly introducing regulation for cryptocurrency, so we don't feel the effects. Personally, I don't think that makes any sense, because then they can't take people's money. And I said this last year, I said it 2 years ago, and I said it 3 months ago, and I said it in a tweet recently. 401ks, pensions, they will get attacked. Yeah. They've already started. I said this in the last live stream. 401k pensions, again, not telling anybody what to do. Absolutely not. Do not take this for financial advice, but keep an eye on your 401ks. If you try to do something that you have normally been able to do for years and you've never had a problem, and then now all of a sudden you've got a problem, there's an issue. There's an issue. Yeah. So just bear that in mind. And let me just go through some of these questions. Every time you ban crypto, they bought the dip. They were playing the market. Yeah, absolutely. Not about growth anymore, all about staying in power, a war to hide a failing system. Absolutely. We need him back, obviously referring to Trump. I agree. Again, I've got no, sort of, how can I say? I don't want to say ties. It doesn't make sense. That wouldn't make sense. But I've got no kind of deep understanding of what happens, in terms of US politics. I only see what I read in the news and whatnot. And the other thing as well is that you have two different types of news now. You've got mainstream news, and you've obviously got sort of alternative media. And some of these alternative media sources are actually much better than listening to mainstream media. I don't really listen to mainstream media, and I try to avoid listening to any alternatives. But there are quite a few that are really professional, really putting themselves out there, and producing quality information, that you can verify, which is very, very good, because we're starting to see that kind of shift, especially on Twitter, where the increase in information that's coming is of a much purer nature, as opposed to it being, whatever the narrative is supposed to be, whatever narrative they're trying to spin, which is not what we want to see. We want to see the truth, right? So when we see the truth, and when we listen to something, we can verify that by watching another 10 or 15 or 20 videos over the course of the day, little short clips, and I don't know about you guys, but I've noticed something on YouTube as well. There's videos on YouTube that last year would have been taken down, because they're talking about subjects or topics that generally would be considered, misinformation or whatever. They're not taking them down. It seems like there's been this big shift in YouTube. I don't know about other content creators and what they're experiencing, but because I don't really talk about controversial topics anyway, but I've watched channels and seen their videos get taken down, over really trivial stuff, and then now all of a sudden, things seem to be okay. So very, very strange. There's a lot of craziness going on. To Osiris responds, just maybe clarify why we believe this is a win-win for the community in bear market conditions. Yep, I am going to like that because I love Swissborg. BNB locked and loaded. Safe Moon. Yeah, that's an interesting one. What do you guys think about this hack on Safe Moon? What was it, 8.7 million? 8.9 million. Function address code. Okay. Yeah, whatever, mate. Okay. Interesting. I did mention this in the last live. I was talking about, this is why I have such a distaste, distaste from or for Safe Moon, because it just seems to keep happening to them over and over again. But yeah, what are your thoughts? I didn't really ask people what their thoughts were. Something fishy. Yeah. I think it is as well. I think there's something. I'm waiting for CoffeeZilla, man. I'm waiting for CoffeeZilla to just throw something out there, put a little video out there and tell us what's going on, because he's the man. He seems to really go into, a lot of details. There's only one day left. Boom. Yep. Wow, trending. US dollar trending. And at this point, I'm just waiting for you guys to ask questions. I've pretty much finished discussing what I wanted to discuss. US dollar on the decline. Yes. Association. Yes, we've seen this. Russia, China, Iran, and Saudi Arabia are moving away from the US dollar. Russia plans to use Chinese yuan instead of US dollar to settle trades with Asia, Africa, and Latin America. And to be honest, for him, it makes perfect sense, because Russia isn't doing, it's a blacklisted country. It's not like it can do business with the US or any of Europe. So, especially with what's going on with the Ukrainian war. So, for Putin, it makes sense. It's the perfect ally. Look at this. Oh, dearie me. This is going to be a long year. Yes, it is. It's going to absolutely be a long year. Every powerhouse country just smashing their way into the country, snatching minerals, resources, and dropping. Yep. So yeah, let's get back to your questions. Something fishy, inside job. Hi, hope everything is well on your side. Buzzing, Flammer. Always happy, man. Always happy. Or at least I try to be. Try to be as happy and as upbeat as I can. Just try and bring as much information as I can to you guys. Don't forget to like the stream. Don't forget to join the Discord if you're not already in there, but I know most of you are anyway. Odd that the LP exploited is the same amount that is in reserves. Yes. I believe the XRP lawsuit is going to be quite a pivot point for the general crypto market. What are your thoughts on the SEC trying to categorize everything as a security? I think it's absolutely absurd. At the end of the day, look, there's this kind of running theme, especially with Bitcoin maxis, right? That Bitcoin is the be all and end all, and then everything else is a security because it doesn't pass the Howey test, right? But to be honest, that simply isn't the case. If you look at some cryptocurrencies, you can clearly define them as, for example, being a commodity, or you can clearly define them as not being a security. It is very intricate. Cryptocurrency is so intricate, right, that it's not just a question of saying there is 5 or 6 different things that it does, so it has to be a security, or there's 5 or 6 different things that it does, so it has to be a commodity. You can't do that with cryptocurrency, because the very decentralized nature of cryptocurrency means by default some of them can't be securities. So for me, it's like the SEC is literally doing everything that it can to make sure it does not lose this court case. If it does, it's going to set a precedent, and it's going to make it very difficult for the SEC to move forward, with this narrative that cryptocurrencies are all securities. Then on top of that, you have this issue with the CFTC going after Binance as a commodity, and then you've got the SEC going after Binance as a security, right? And they've both made that very clear. You go back 2 years, the CFTC said when Binance approached them, to register and do whatever they did with their licensing and everything else, that it's a commodity. And then fast forward 2 years, they still insist it's a commodity. Then you've got the SEC saying it's a security. Wells notice gets issued. Now they're attacking Binance with all this other stuff. So they're really trying to push this narrative that it is like they're all securities. I don't believe they are. And I really, really hope that XRP wins this court case, because it will, in my opinion, I think it's going to drastically change the landscape, of cryptocurrency. Obviously for the better, but it's going to be very difficult for the SEC to come back from that, and then insist that all of these, cryptocurrencies are securities. They're not, they're just not. Some cryptocurrency, it's actually interesting because some cryptocurrencies, don't even have liquidity pools. They're just governance tokens, or they're part of a DAO, for example. There's no intrinsic value, or there's no actual value for some of the tokens. They're just used as a means to have voting rights, or they're used as a means to be able to, access particular services and so on. And the more that you own of a particular, token, the more say that you have, but they don't have any value, whereas you can have all of those variables that are tied to a liquidity pool, and it does have value. But again, to say that they're all securities without any understanding of how cryptocurrency works is absolutely absurd. Doesn't make any sense to me. Since it would be a huge win, it might get loads of dumb money. Yeah. Look, with all things, if XRP wins the court case, it's going to explode. It will absolutely explode. Yeah, there's no question about that. And it will just be a byproduct, right, of hype and relief, and this is the one, and everybody will just go flooding into XRP. Anybody that has or is holding XRP, is holding as a gamble. People are, and when I say gamble, it's not a bad gamble. It's just people are betting on them winning this court case, and if they do, great. You'll make some money. If they don't, obviously it will drop. Absolutely. And then you kind of bet doesn't pay off. It's like basically betting on a boxing match, or betting on a football match, or betting on a UFC match. Somebody's going to win, somebody's going to lose, It seems like the two of them need to figure their shit out. Yeah, absolutely, man. They don't even. This is my point. You've got two regulatory compliance bodies fighting with each other. It makes no sense. If they want to force CBDCs on us and end physical cash, do you think XRP losing would benefit the governments? Absolutely. Because then they can say it's a security, this is that, we won, and now we're going to move forward, and we're going to aggressively start to push regulation out there to say that all cryptocurrencies are, securities. And just to be clear as well, I don't know the ins and outs of the XRP lawsuit, right? I maybe should, spend a little bit of time and go through it and actually look at the ins and outs, of what's going on there. But I do know it's been going on for some time. And to be honest, it is looking like XRP may come out on top of this, because the SEC in some areas, from the very little research that I've done, have no legal standing for some of the things that they're trying to go after XRP for. So I'm going to look into that. I'm going to go into it a little bit deeper. And we'll see how that kind of unfolds. But it will be very, very interesting. If XRP loses, yeah, it will absolutely benefit the government. I understand. I'll gamble $50. Not financial advice, man. Absolutely not. For me, I'm purely technical. You guys know this, man. The $50 that I put into XRP for the public experiment that I'm doing, was just for 55. I'm currently still in it. I do like the way that it's holding up here. I'm not going to be adding to the position at all. Just want to see what it, whether it stabilizes up here. May get a secondary pop, I don't know, but I think we will stabilize and maybe pull in a little bit before it does anything else. But so far so good. Monthly's looking great. We start the next month and really start to push. It is possible that we end up at 68, which at the time was about 11 cents. Obviously it's a little bit more now, but yeah, I don't really particularly like XRP. I don't really care what they do. For me, it's just purely technical. And sometimes people are like, well, if you don't read or don't know fundamentally what's happening with XRP, how can you possibly know, right, that it was going to break out from 46 to at least 55, 56? Because the chart's telling me it's going to do that. People say technical analysis doesn't work. It absolutely does work. You've just got to know what you're doing. If you know how to read price, and understand psychology, it prints people's psychology on the chart. Every candle and combinations of candles, right, are showing you what people are doing. I can prove this beyond a shadow of a doubt. And this is for everybody that's in the chat. Would you say all of this here, right? Where would you say the hype phase is and the FOMO phase is, right? And where would you say, and this is just in this section of price here. Let me just make it a little bit smaller. Hype phase, hype and FOMO phase, right? And then the panic phase. I'll be back in 2 seconds. So just to clarify, hype phase, FOMO phase, panic phase. Really easy to see. If you can't see it, then there's something wrong. It's so easy to see. Very, very easy to see. And again, just a reminder, don't forget to like the stream, sub the channel, help me out. But yeah, hype phase, FOMO phase, panic phase. And let me do this so we can really see. Ooh, that's a nice one. We can do it over here as well. Hype phase, FOMO phase, panic phase. FOMO should be the second green candle after the first dip. Second green candle after the first dip. Yes. Yep. Somewhere around there. And to be honest, I know some of you are on your phones and it can be a little bit fumbly, so I'll show you. I mean, it's so obvious. Hype, nothing really happening here. Hype, 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 boom. FOMO, 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 FOMO. Massive, massive FOMO. Massive FOMO right at the top here. Yeah. Profit takers, drop, panic, 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 panic. Yeah. Same here. Hype, 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 hype. FOMO, 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 extreme FOMO, sells, a little bit more hype, a little bit more FOMO, sells, and when it drops right there, panic kicks in, and then people just slowly start to ease out. Yeah, we can see it. We can see it on the chart. It's not difficult to see. It really, really isn't difficult. Difficult to see. Now the nuances and having confidence in what you're seeing, that's a different story. Being able to look at this and say, I have confidence to put money into XRP at 46, believing very strongly with a 90+ accuracy rate that it's going to get 55, 56. That's a different story. That's quite difficult to do because you have to have confidence in your analysis. I don't really trade with emotions. I used to really, really trade with emotions. I was terrible. I was the worst. But I don't do that anymore. I'm just emotionless when I open positions. I mean, in fact, and I'll just quickly tell you guys what the average is currently. So we currently have XRP is up $6.87, and the rest are basically just hovering around $50 basically. Some are up 30 or so cents, some are down 10 to 10 15 cents or whatever. So we're kind of getting this flat baseline, with XRP being the only one that's kind of popped a little bit, which is so far so good. But I'm going to leave it. My intention was to take it off at the time, but I'm going to leave it. We've still got $750 left to kind of play around with, so we'll see how that goes. Excuse me. So yeah. So all in all, that's the session. I think we've discussed some pretty interesting topics. We'll just have another quick look at Twitter. The US government will never allow Bitcoin to replace the US dollar. This is Coin on the Cob. I love that name. Let's have a read of this. Did Britain allow the US dollar to replace the pound sterling? Did Dutch allow the pound to replace the guilder? Did French allow the guilder to replace the franc? Did Spanish or Spain allow the franc to replace the real? Interesting. Nick Carter. This is baffling. According to the NYDIG, as of January 2021, 22% of US adults own some form of crypto. How is this a winning issue? This Elizabeth Warren, I mean, just to kind of close out on this is ridiculous. To attack crypto in such an aggressive manner. And this is what I was saying to you guys about the brazenness of what it is that they're doing, right? They're getting to the point where they just don't care. They're like, we're going to do whatever we want, whenever we want, and you guys are just going to have to accept it. And I think what's happening is they're finding it very difficult to control people now because people are a lot smarter and they have more control over, the system of finance. through cryptocurrency. So I'm really looking forward to how all of this plays out. But as George Carlin said once, I have no stake in, humanity's future. You just sit back and enjoy the ride, and with that said, I'm going to close out the stream. Really, really appreciate everybody hanging out for 50 minutes, and for all the questions. And I really hope that, the things that I talk about and what I go through, offers some value, to you guys. And if you ever want to talk about anything, or if any of you ever want to come on the live stream, tell me. Yeah. Maybe I'll start mentioning it as well. Get some guests on here. We can talk. We can, you guys can ask me questions live. More than happy to do that. So yeah, just remind me during the streams if you want to come up. I'll bring you up. It's not a problem. I'll send you a link and take it from there. All right, guys, have an awesome evening. I'm in all the usual places, and I'll chat to you soon. Ciao, ciao.